Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel of Wall Street Mojo. Friends, today we are going to learn a tutorial on economies of scale versus economies of scope. Quite an interesting one. Well, let's begin. Economies of scale and economies of scope are both concepts of economics, and they both are very useful to a business that wants to grow and serves its customer better. Economies of scale happens basically, I'll write scale over here so that we can bifurcate things. Scale and scope. Economies of scale basically happens when a company reaches a point of production where the cost of the production COP is no longer increasingly or increases. Rather than that, it decreases or it reduces, and it happens only in the bulk production. Whereas economies of scope, on the other hand, happens when a company produces variety of products. Due to producing varieties of products, the cost of production gets reduced. So when we talk about scale are being applied in a business for a very long time, it's applied for a very long time, while if we talk about the scope, is comparatively new approach in business economics and strategy. So in this tutorial, we'll go through each of these concepts in detail and we'll do a comparative analysis between the same. So let's understand this with the help of infographics and get into the nitty-gritty of the same. Now, the key differences. The meaning, that's the first one. It saves the cost of production, right? The cost to produce any material beyond a certain points. Over here, on the other hand, if we talk about the scope, it saves the cost of production if company produces varieties of production. So if there's a diversification of the product, then it saves the cost of production, right? Meaning is done. The second point of differentiation is reduces the cost of one product and reduces the cost of multiple product, because there is diversified product over here, then only the cost can be reduced. As the name itself suggests, this is scaling and this is a scope. Third, what this is all about. If we talk about the scale, it is producing one type of product in bulk, but in this case producing multiple products under a same operation. So there are multiple products but operating under a one single window. Now, fourth point of differentiation is reduction due to bulk production. What is a driver that is helping to reduce the cost of production? It is the bulk production, and over here is the varieties of production. Varieties of production means multiple products which have been used. So that reduces the cost of production. These are the two drivers, right? Now, the fifth point, it is relatively the old concept and this is the new concept, and this is used basically everywhere, and it is being recently used by the businesses. So this is basically the new concept that has been introduced in the market. Now, what is the strategy behind this particular thing? Standardization of the product, and over here diversification, just what I told you at the very starting stage of the infographic. So here there is a standardization, and over here there's a diversification. That means expanding the horizons in terms of products, right? Now, what is exactly the importance or the use of this two? So if we talk about the scope, a huge amount of resources, since the production happens in bulk, a huge amount of resources since the production happens in bulk. And over here in case of so this is a scale and this is scope, so a lot of less resources, because under one operation, that is under one window, multiple products are being produced. Now let's take an example on the same. Production of one type of smartphones is in huge quantities, but when we talk about over here in terms of scope, production of multiple food items by using the same resources. With the help of milk, you are producing cheese, mozzarella, and so on and so forth. So this is basically the example for both the scenarios. Now let's understand what are the key differences that goes in when we talk about scope and scale. Okay, let's begin on the same. Economies of scale is all about basically increasing, you can say, increasing the units of production Okay, this is what we are talking over here, and economies of scope is basically we are all talking about over here of increasing, that is addition or increasing in the varieties. This is very important point. Increase in the varieties. Second point of important differentiation, economies of scale help a company look at the average, basically the average cost per unit, and then gradually increases the quantity till the average cost of per unit reaches its minimum. Economies of scope are all about utilizing the infrastructure. It's all about using the infrastructure and basically to reduce the average cost per unit. The third point of differentiation, economies of scale depends more on the production capacity. So this is relevant thing, production capacity of one product. When we talk about the scope, economies of scope depends more on the infrastructure of the company to produce multiple products under one head. Fourth point of differentiation, this is some of the important points. Economies of scale is relatively basically the old concept that we have just learned, and economies of scope is basically a new concept. You can say over here what we learned as standardization and over here as diversification. So you can tell me horizon of scope is more over here, or in scope horizon of scope is more, horizon of diversification or horizon of expansion is more in terms of scope rather than in terms of scale. So based on this we can make some final conclusion. We can sum this up, what we discussed as meaning, what it reduces to, what reduces the cost, then what it is all about. Then we discussed what reduction, what is the reason behind which this is getting reduced, the cost of production because of the bulk or the varieties in production, and so on and so forth. So let me recapitulate the whole thing, make a final conclusion on this. As a business, understanding and using both of this can be beneficial, but it is better that a business use these two things prudently. Very important. Now you need to know where to use economies of scale and where to use economies of scope. So if you are already selling, let's say 5 products under a head of your company, trying to achieve economies of scale isn't a sagacious decision. Instead, in that case, if you go for economies of scope, it would be much more wiser. At the same time, if you know that as a company, your core strength lies in producing just, let's say, one product, okay, and going for economies of scope to reduce the average cost per unit isn't a prudent one. So you need to know when and you need to know what. Thank you everyone.